in the country. So I'm briefly just going to talk about COVID-19 and the future of human rights. Can we, I don't know who is in charge of the slide, but can you go to the first slide? So I think one of the things that we noted about COVID is that we are all aware that the pandemic emerged in China sometime towards the end of 2019. And it was only in January 2020 that the World Health Organization designated it as a global pandemic. So what it then naturally meant was that there needed to be a global response, in trying to contain the effects of what they term as a global pandemic. So what then happens naturally is that when we have a situation that is declared a global emergency or a global pandemic, in this case, the state, rather than civil society, naturally becomes the locus of responses, at a national level to whatever emergency or pandemic that it is. So I think what we then saw from March onwards was that the state comes in with restrictions and lockdowns as the key tools, in containing the further spread of the pandemic. I think, of course, they were being informed by recommendations from the World Health Organization. So what these restrictions and lockdowns essentially did was to legally limit, some rights and freedoms as we ordinarily enjoy them. So you actually find that, for example, when the state instituted lockdown measures, we all had to stay home at some point in time. Of course, we were under the impression that we are, following the orders and recommendations of WHO. What they mean is that our freedom of movement, our freedom to go about our daily livelihood sustaining chores was abruptly cut. Of course, they had been that talk to say, okay, even as people are in their homes, the state would come in, identify the most vulnerable, give them grants and so forth and so forth. But I'm sure for those who have been checking the government's performance in all this, will actually attest to the fact that the state was not able to meet some of those obligations which it placed upon itself. Can you go to the next slide, please? So what has been the progression of COVID-19 since it was first detected in 2019? I think those graphs are very clear. I don't necessarily need to belabor myself speaking to that. But what is clear from there is that so far since 2019 was a bit mild. Things got worse with the second wave, and were worse, I think, according to what we have noted during that second wave, which is the third set of clusters on that graph. So this speaks both, I think, on the Zimbabwe situation in terms of the COVID-19 confirmed cases, graphs, and then the number of total deaths that we have witnessed. Can you go to the next slide? So I think what those graphs were giving, is that, like I said, you've been through three waves. And what you will notice about those waves is that there are lockdowns that we have had. I think, for example, in March 2020, also I think sometime from June 2020, and also in January of 2021. I think those lockdowns have actually resulted in a decline in cases. I think when the decline in cases is noted, I think there is that gradual opening up of the economy and the easing of the restrictions. That easing of restrictions period is then associated with a subsequent rise in cases, which gives us a subsequent wave, which then I think necessitates another imposition of the hard lockdown, which then intense gradual decline of cases. So this is how the waves have been generated, or the waves of the spread of the pandemic has been contained, um, resulting in the undulating waves that we have seen. Can we go to next? So what has been the general impact of COVID-19? I think the biggest thing that we saw was that disruption in the global commodity value and supply chains, and their linkages, to the local context. I think this has also, resulted in the dipping of global economies across the world. I think when you close down the economy, close businesses and so forth, there is no production. And so, for example, if you are going to look at the tax that corporates pay as a key driver of an economy, when those corporates are not operating, it obviously means they are either not paying taxes or are paying very, very reduced taxes. One thing that we also noted as a general impact, was the national vaccination initiative. I think initially there wasn't really vaccine, but our scientists at the global level were able to quickly come up with vaccines. So it was actually the developed, mostly the Western, but also some countries in the Eastern Bloc that have been able to produce vaccines. But of course, what it also brought out was that Western publicity, particularly in terms of access to vaccines for the global south. So I'm sure we're all quite aware of how some countries in the West, you know, what is the vaccines probably to last them until 2020, 2024, 2025. And yet there are a lot of countries in the global south that still do not have access to adequate vaccines. I think the AU has tried through its COVAX initiative to also broaden the access of vaccines to African countries. But of course, this has not really helped, in getting people in the global south to access this vaccine. If you also even look at the intellectual property debate, around African countries that have been saying, okay, why don't the more developed countries, um, give the less developed countries access to intellectual property around the production of vaccines, so as to help, people's access to vaccines in these other countries. More recently, I think most of you were following the duplicity again of the West that emerged around, the discovery of the Omicron variant by South Africa. I think we're only learning now that some countries in the West actually knew about this new variant, but they suppressed that information. And when South Africa, being an African country, is quick to say, okay, we have identified a new variant. I think the reaction from the majority of Western countries was to, curtail any movement from a number of southern African countries, which of course I think then brings in this issue of duplicity from the West. I think what we also saw as a general impact was the exacerbation of the global geopolitical tiff, between East and West. I'm sure a lot of you have followed, the politics around Sinovac, for example, and the Sputnik vaccine versus the Western produced vaccines, the Johnson and Johnson, AstraZeneca, and so forth. I think it took a long time for the World Health Organization to accept the other vaccines from the East as part of the global basket of vaccines that are available to citizens of the globe. And I think, as I already mentioned, to say the COVID-19 pandemic has also exacerbated that perennial divide between the global south and the global north in terms of access to vaccines and healthcare. Can we move to the next slide? So what has been the effects in terms of rights? I'll particularly speak here about socio-economic rights. So you find that with the nature of structuring of our economies, particularly in the global south of which Zimbabwe is a part of, we've seen that the pandemic virtually affected all sectors of the economy. I think Mr. Chilima Mambo talked about, the formalization that we've seen in the Zimbabwean economy. So, whilst of course the World Bank and the IMF puts us at around 66% informality, or basically the share of the economy that is informal, you actually find that it's not only the informal sector that was affected, but both the formal and the informal sectors of the economy were affected. But as we have already seen, I think the formal sectors of the economy did get some reprieve and some concessions from government. So you actually find that when the pandemic started and we had the initial lockdown where everything virtually came to a standstill except for what we termed is for some like supermarkets, for example, because they are registered, they pay tax and so forth, they could get that concession to say, okay, you can open from this particular time to this particular time. But the same did not happen for the informal sector, where we locate, more than half of for Zimbabweans earning their livelihood. Rather, what we saw, I think, during the initial lockdown was that government, including central and local government, took advantage of the lockdown to demolish some of the structures of informal vendors. It was not only in Bali, but it was actually across the country. And obviously, the effect that this has on those who rely on the informal sector for their livelihoods cannot be overemphasized. If you have your store demolished and you are not even then allowed to go to wherever you usually have your small marketplace, then what it simply means is that for those who survive and tomorrow, day to day, it becomes very difficult to sustain life. So what it then does naturally is to limit your enjoyment of your social, economic. So we actually saw that the close of schools affected, the right to education. Of course, there were those who then moved to online learning, but of course, we know that given our realities, where not only network barriers, but access to data, access to smartphones, and so forth, for those on the lower strata of the income bracket, you actually find that for a lot of children, they were actually docile and dominant, in the houses, given the state of poverty which is in the country. A lot could not afford data to continue with online learning, and it became quite chaotic. I think we also saw how our healthcare was exposed in terms of its adequacy to respond to such challenges. Of course, the right to water, the secure livelihood, social security, and employment also came, under serious threat as a result of COVID. I think some of the more high-profile cases that were reported, particularly in the media during the first days, also exposed, the inadequacies of our health system, and of obviously endangering that right to health. I'm sure a lot of you remember about the Wilkins fiasco with a ventilator that could not find a plug, to be plugged in. And of course, that rural urban divide, to say the vaccination drive has not been as high in the rural areas as opposed to the urban areas. And of course, this causes those living in the rural areas at a slight disadvantage in terms of that enjoyment to the right to health. The flip side that we've seen, coming in from the hard enforcement of lockdown regulations, I think it also to some extent helped in stemming the further spread of the COVID-19 variant. So yes, we did have some rights violations that occurred, as state security agencies were trying to enforce these lockdowns. I'm sure we all encountered stories of people being made to go in the mud, being made to do all sorts of funny things by the state security agencies. But one thing that we also noted is that as a country, and which I think is one positive that we note of this government, is that the COVID-19 response, which I think also who is commended, is that the COVID-19 response for Zimbabwe was actually way up, as compared to other African countries. I think the last chart I saw about 3 or 4 months ago was putting us at almost number 8 out of the 54 countries in Africa, which is a good score. I think if you look at what drove that, I think the support that we got from the Chinese government in terms of access to vaccines. Of course, initially there was that tiff between East and West, saying, okay, the sign of that vaccine and so forth and so forth. But I think for all of you that have been vaccinated, it attests that it's probably one of the things that saved the country from witnessing a high number of deaths as opposed to other countries. But I think one thing that we have also noted is that despite initially having a very high number of people getting vaccinated and with a high level of access to vaccines, I think the government has also failed to take advantage of the high number of vaccine doses we have to ramp up their vaccination drive so that at least probably we could get closer to having some form of herd immunity, which I think from the whole recommendations is one of the key things that can get us back to our economies opening up. And I think for some of you who follow international news, I think for the whole last year, for those of you who follow English soccer, for example, the stadiums were empty. But as of sometime this year, we began to see people actually filling up those stadiums without any masks. I think it was that idea of getting the vaccinated number up so that at least we can claim to have that herd immunity and be able to open up your economies. And I think they have those questions to say, is it been deliberate that our government has slowed down the vaccination drive or is actually not pushing that vaccination drive to get a notch higher so that we can reach herd immunity people? Can you move to the next one? So, in terms of the civic and political rights situation, I think what we have identified as crisis coalition is that the COVID-19 is actually been used, to push biopolitics. So, what we mean by biopolitics is simply that notion of using the pandemic of COVID-19 to limit the enjoyment of those civic and political rights. So I think naturally, as I indicated earlier, national emergencies or disaster situations actually provide for the states to legally curtail some of our rights and freedoms. But what we have seen is an overstepping, on the limitation of some of these rights, even against, scientific evidence that is emerging. So you actually find that, the rights to assembly, the rights to association, personal security, poor human and integrated nutrition, all those rights we have seen being violated in the name of containing the pandemic. And as it stands, I think we have already seen a number of national initiatives that have been, stopped, all in the name of COVID. We all know how, our gatherings at some point in time were limited to certain numbers, all in the name of containing the pandemic. But I think what is more worrying is that instead of those restrictions and regulations being uniformly applied, the worrying thing is that they actually been selectively applied. So if you are coming from household A, you are not allowed to have rallies with more than 30 or 50 people. But if you are coming from household B, you can have as many as 1,000 or even 10,000 if you can get them. Whether they are wearing masks, whether they are social distancing or not is another issue. For as long as you are coming from household B. But if you are coming from household A, the moment that your mask is lowered, for example, it becomes an issue. The moment that you are standing about 99 centimeters away from the next person, it becomes an issue and you are liable to prosecution. Can we have the next slide? So what does this mean for the future of human rights? I think here what we are seeing, particularly if you go to the dashboard of the website for Zimbabwe that I opened in the graphs earlier, and also even if you follow the reports of the current cases or deaths, I think it's clear that we might actually be entering a fourth wave of COVID-19, of course, also exacerbated by the emergence of this new variant, the Omicron variant, which they say is more transmissible than previous variants, but of course, though not yet clearly confirmed. Some scientists actually suggesting that it might actually be less lethal than the previous variants that we have seen. So this obviously gives some glimmer of hope that we might actually be seeing ourselves moving towards the closure of this chapter of COVID-19 if we get weaker variants coming into the frame. And I think the 30 November adjustment of restrictions is announced by the President of the Republic, which I think one of the biggest issues here was those requirements for those entering through our port of entry to say the statutory instrument part of the process. So what we have also seen, like I highlighted, is that the biopolitics are already starting to impact on many rights associated with this anticipated fourth wave. So I think sometime in November, we're been built as a country to have a voter registration drive in anticipation for the by-elections slated for the first quarter of next year. But this drive was postponed indefinitely. Of course, we're not so sure why it was postponed in November when there were not yet any indications of a fourth wave coming. What we've also seen is that I think starting tomorrow, some members of civil society were penciled to meet with the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee on Public Service, Labour and Social Welfare to discuss about the impending people but that engagement slated for tomorrow was postponed at the last minute yesterday. I think the reason given there was that issue of rising number of cases of COVID-19. What we also anticipate is that if the cases keep rising, it will not be surprising that the restrictions will be made harder. We have reduced operating times for businesses. We have reduced operating times through the curfew. And we might as well even see the return of the ban of intercity traveling as a result of the rising cases. And I think, like I noted earlier, all this would be in the response to the COVID-19 pandemic. It's highly likely that the government will continue to use COVID-19 to justify the rights violations that I mentioned earlier as a result of the COVID-19. This obviously will remain to be across the wider plane of rights, from the socio-economic rights to political and civic rights across the board. Yeah, so that ends my presentation. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Comrade State, for that provoking presentation. I think I touched on a number of things. The first one is the impact. I think globally, the impact of COVID-19 cannot be disputed. We have seen businesses closing. We've seen even countries in the global north instituting various forms of lockdown. I think one of the issues that he spoke about was in relation to the issue of by-elections. I think the pending by-elections, I think we've seen a lot of controversy around it in terms of when exactly a by-election is going to be conducted. We saw in his presentation he spoke about the use of the statutory instruments around issues of health and what that was used to effect the ban on by-elections by the Minister of Health, Dr. Chiwenga. He also spoke about national vaccination initiatives. The chief rather the competition between the West and the Eastern countries in terms of vaccine monopolies. We have seen Zimbabwe depending heavily on vaccines from the East at the expense of maybe our traditional donors who are responsible for bilateral aid in our country. We are talking about the Western countries, we are talking about USA, we are talking about GFID, etc. We also spoke about the impending, in the wake of COVID 19 cases. I think as of yesterday, I was shocked when I looked at the statistics to just say we had new cases of around over 5,000 cases. I think it's quite shocking, and I think we all know what it means in terms of the lockdowns. There's various lockdowns that we've gone through during this year. We also spoke about challenges, especially for countries in the global south, in terms of attaining herd immunity. I think our numbers also as a country, they are not encouraging in terms of vaccinations across the country. We spoke about the attendant restrictions that come with lockdowns. I think we can agree that during the various lockdowns that we have seen this year, we have seen also an increase in terms of human rights violations, especially maybe state security. For example, issues of restrictions to say you're not supposed to gather as a group, and the definition of what constitutes a group, I think is also been subject to debate. We have seen intercity travel bans being instituted. We have seen even rural areas becoming the center of human rights violations, especially for opposite political parties. Some have been denied the right to even embark on voter mobilization drives by state security agents. We've also now the issue that we are faced with, I think as a country, they are the prospects for the fourth wave that is likely to also have it can also have negative impacts on the impending public hearings on the PVO bill. The PVO bill, I think it's quite significant in the way that civil society does. So going forward, we are likely to see probably a repeat of what we encountered in 2021 during the lockdown. So arrests, arbitrary arrests, etc. I don't know if there are any reactions from the presentation by the crisis in Zimbabwe coalition from the floor. Okay.
Thank you very much. I said in the beginning I was going to listen and try to learn. I've listened, I've learned, and I think we are about to come to the end of our program. Look, I come from the disability sector, and in all our presentations, I don't see any indication that we recognize that the disability sector still has to enjoy basic rights. Rights on education, rights on health, rights on access to information, rights on general accessibility. For example, we were talking about COVID-19. If people without disabilities were affected, what about those with disabilities? So I realize a gap. I think there is need, ladies and gentlemen, as Mr. Mayer indicated when he opened this forum, that we also need to look at rights for vulnerable people, rights for the marginalized. Now I'm worried that in all our presentations, if we didn't speak about those issues, if we go back to our offices, are we able to ensure that the minority, the vulnerable, also enjoy their rights. This is my worry, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you so much for that input. I think the presenters still made the stone package, but I think what is saying is true because one of the key points that you mentioned is that if people with disabilities can be without disabilities can be affected by the impact of COVID-19, what more those with disabilities? So I think it's something that we are also supposed to incorporate within our programming broadly, not only as organizations, but broadly as civil society organizations. Thank you for that, say. Do we have any reactions before I give room to the Zimbabwe Gender Commission? The Gender Commission, they challenges, they were supposed to be with us, but they encountered some logistical challenges. But the CEO, Ms. Virginia Mwanigwa, managed to send through a presentation. So, acknowledge Manipasa is going to take us through the presentation. We can give him a round of applause, though you couldn't give me.
Thank you. So what I'm just doing is to speak to what the Zimbabwe Gender Commission was going to say if they had come. So basically, the first, there is need to understand the background or context in which gender-based and the imbalanced policies that we have that are not gender sensitive, they also contribute to gender-based violence itself. But we also have issues around gender-based violence taking place within homes, which creates a negative environment that may not enable women and girls to be able to enjoy their rights just like everyone else. There is also an element of fear of victimization. Generally, when sexual and gender-based violence takes place within communities, it is traditional and cultural that you do not expose what happens within your own house. And as a result, it becomes one of those foundations that sustains and perpetuates sexual and gender-based violence. But we also have macroeconomic issues or economic practices. The environment that we are in is not generally conducive for all people to be able to afford the basic needs that they need. And as a result, we find sexual exploitation actually taking place, and we have dependence of women to men also being much more. And as a result, it becomes one of those contextual issues that contributes to sexual and gender-based violence. There is a definition here about that explains how gender-based violence comes about. They say gender-based violence is a symptom of gender inequality in society. So what it means is inequalities and inequities that exist within our communities are kind of part of those foundations or root causes to sexual and gender-based violence. And it also affects the constitutional rights that women have to enjoy. Just a brief context on the functions of the Zimbabwe Gender Commission. The Zimbabwe Gender Commission is established by Section 246 of the Constitution, and it outlines a number of functions that they have to perform. But this, in general, the Commission is meant to monitor issues that concern gender equality within the country, but also focus mainly on women. It also focus on investigating possible violations of rights relating to gender, among other factors. I would have to rush on this because we are going to repeat them in the next slide. So mainly, the work of the Zimbabwe Gender Commission, one is to monitor compliance with laws that we have, which promote and protect the rights of women. But we should be conscious that gender itself does not necessarily affect women, but it's the social construction of different practices that we have, which affects both men and women. But generally, we have been term gender referring to women, but in actual fact, it refers to the socially constructed roles that we ascribe to women. So in this particular instance, what I think the Zimbabwe Gender Commission have done is lobbying for the establishment or enactment of the Gender Equality Act and the Sexual Harassment Act. Secondly, public education. Basically, the Zimbabwe Gender Commission provides and disseminates information relating to gender equality and gender equity. They also carry out investigations into understanding what kind of factors that contribute to sexual and gender-based violence, and what are those aspects in terms of structural policies and practices that also contribute to GBV. They also conduct research and knowledge management initiatives. This is basically generating knowledge that contributes to the advancement of the rights of women and girls. They also collaborate with different actors who contribute either to the promotion or to the promotion of the rights of women, so that at least where there is collaboration, obviously it becomes constructive in most cases, and that will enhance the work of the Zimbabwe Gender Commission. There's also an indication that much more interesting is that there is also a collaboration between other Chapter 12 commissions and the Zimbabwe Gender Commission. We would appreciate that among other commissions that are established to support democracy, we have the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission, we have the Zimbabwe Media Commission, we have the National Peace and Reconciliation Commission, and last we have the Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission. So that complementarity contributes to strengthen and support of the rights of women and girls, and also the advancement of gender equality and equity in the country. So the Zimbabwe Gender Commission, its entry point emphasizes citizen participation. The reason why they emphasize citizen participation as an entry point to the protection of human rights and the rights of women in particular is because there is a correlationship. Because there is a relationship between participation of citizens and how they also reach out to achieve their livelihood needs. Citizen participation in principle it magnifies their voice, elaborates their choices, and gives them control over their destiny. What it basically means is where there is citizen participation, or where there is active participation of all social groups, including men and women, girls and boys, it enhances and amplifies individual voices and group voices, which at the end of the day creates an environment where people are able to contribute their views towards creating an equitable society that respects the rights of everyone. So without participation, lack of participation in itself, it takes away the ability of people to be able to become agents for social change. So where we do not create a conducive environment for women and girls and for all different marginalized groups to participate, what it means is it takes away the value that people should add in terms of in developing their rights and generally in the development discourse. There we have different constitutional provisions that contribute towards the promotion of gender equality and gender equity. The first thing is the Zimbabwe Gender Commission centers its work on the Constitution, which is the supreme law of the land. There is also Section 3, which talks about gender equality as a valuable principle. Section 13, which is the national development that should protect and enhance the rights of people, particularly women, to equal opportunities in development. I think generally we would appreciate that because of the social structures, the cultural practices that we perpetuate as human beings, much of them, they also takes away the fair and equal participation of women and girls. Hence, the need to be able to address such kinds of gaps. I think there are a number of provisions, which I may not go through all of them, but what is more important is to consider that the constitution that we have has made strides towards promoting and protecting the rights of women. I think the major gap that would then exist is to what extent are these provisions that we have here are actually being implemented towards ensuring that there is equity, there is fairness and justice for all human rights. Modalities for citizen participation. Um, so section 233 of the Constitution of Zimbabwe, for the chapter, all of them coming together to demonstrate what sort of issues that should be respected and what sort of issues that are actually guaranteed by the Constitution. So generally to demonstrate the difference between equality and equity, I'm sure the first picture where you find equality is there is need to ensure that all people have an opportunity to access all rights that are guaranteed by the Constitution. And all people deserve to have such guarantees without necessarily being discriminatory in nature. And where there is equity, is appreciating that the way we live, we are born differently, but we should actually create an environment where those who are disadvantaged or marginalized are actually able to also enjoy their rights in the same way that those who are advantaged do. I'm sure that's why you can see the second picture where there's equity there. Someone has then been given a second stool to be able to also see the environment, the scene, just like everyone else is doing. So, what gender equality and gender equity is not meant to say we are all at the same point, we are born similar. We may have those differences, but we should find a way that creates and enhances fairness. That's equity that we want to promote. And there are four aspects there that contribute to equity in development practices. I think one is awareness and conscious raising. So generally, sometimes people do not enjoy their rights simply because they do not have knowledge. They are not aware of their rights. So until such a point, when people are well informed, it is the responsibility of us as peace builders, as human rights defenders, and development practitioners that we are able to understand the different dynamics that takes place within communities, which prevents people from accessing information. Hence, our responsibility to then play a role in raising awareness and raising the social consciousness of our communities. Deconstructing norms that hinder participation. It is also important that we identify and deconstruct particularly cultural practices that prohibit women and girls and boys from enjoying their rights just like anyone else. Thirdly, transformative justice through legislative and policy review and action. I think we have alluded to structural policies that do not create an environment for equity. Where we have such kind of policies, it is our responsibility that we enhances our advocacy campaigns towards ensuring that we have transformative justice within our societies by advocating for policies that advances equity and equality. And at the center, demanding rights through citizen participation. I think I mentioned that this is the end point that the Zimbabwe Gender Commission uses. So citizen participation is centrally important because of its ability to raise citizen agency. Where there is no agency among the affected population and those who are concerned, then what it means is policies that will be generated will always be biased and skewed towards those who are advantaged. In short, in summary, or to conclude the presentation, one key success that the Zimbabwe Gender Commission has registered that they have been able to leverage on different advocacy campaigns to push for the enactment of the Gender Equality Act and the Sexual Harassment Act. And the Zimbabwe Gender Commission have indicated that at present the ministry is actually working toward those two legislations being developed. But the key challenge that still exists is that gender discrimination continues to take place because of the structural practices and norms and values that we have not deconstructed. The Constitution guarantees the rights of women and the rights of everyone else, but the implementation is the major gap which perpetuates aspects of sexual and gender-based violence to continue taking place. And this is also important to note given that we are in the period of 16 days of gender activism. It is crucial that we continue keeping it up and we remember that we need to continue deconstructing the norms and values that perpetuate sexual and gender-based violence. And lastly, particular, is that there is lack of harmony between the constitutional guarantees and cultural norms. Whereas the Constitution provides for the rights of women, for the protection and promotion of rights of every citizen, but the cultural norms and values that we have do not allow such social changes to actually be effected. So at the end of the day, we will realize that we are not moving at the pace that we want to advance equality and equity among men and women. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. I think this is why I raised my case. Okay.
Thank you, Zimbabwe Gender Commission. Thank you, Gender Commission, for the presentation. I think what we can do, since we do not have a representative from the Gender Commission, we can have questions. You can put your questions in writing. If there are any reactions, then you can submit to us. Then we can always facilitate for the Gender Commission to receive your consent. At this point, let me call upon Comrade Frank Mpato to come and take us through the next session of Way Forward. Thank you for your patience. Comrades, you can give me a round of applause. Join Madam Matumbe.
All right. Must be a long day, right?
Yeah.
I can tell. They can see. So thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to facilitate the last session. And of course, it is the most difficult session. Dr. Chimambo already mentioned that, I mean, as much as we have all these challenges that have been brought about by the previous presenter, the key question is then what? You know, so that it remains, it doesn't remain to be a talk. It's important for us to answer those questions before we leave. Then what? So just a small rundown. I think it was great that we were taken through a traveling frame, starting with Dr. Chimambo, gave us the political economy analysis of Zimbabwe, which I found very, very interesting. Quite a number of things that I didn't know. But thank you so much for taking us through that traveling frame and understanding that this nation, the state has moved in stages to where we are, largely being an informal economy. Hence, we have to plan our programming around that, that reality to say the civil society, how they can mobilize citizens to protect human rights against the new state of affairs. And of course, the comrade from NISA also taking us through the state of human rights and media in Zimbabwe. I remember when I was at media school myself, there was what they called the ICA, which was introduced through the comrade Jonathan Moore. And now we have the Data Protection Act. So both of them still draconian. It still begs the question to say, then what are we going to do in that regard? The state of human rights in Zimbabwe by NGO Forum also very scary, but the reality as well. To say, more than 1,300 cases of human rights abuses of various nature being recorded in Zimbabwe so far. And probably we're not victims yet, but since we are the human rights defenders, we are probably on the line. So what should we do to protect ourselves and our comrades within this sector? And yes, the bishop is also giving a biblical perspective, the analogy of what peace should look like. Trying to drive that agenda from the biblical lens to say how did we strengthen our society and use the biblical lens and understanding to build resilient communities which are needed to sustain justice and peace. Terence, there are different terrains also giving us corona and human rights. Um, you know, Painting an analogy of the urban and rural nexus. To say to what extent is it affecting the people in the rural areas as compared to urban dwellers? What about the poor against the rich? Maybe the women against men? In the state of reprisal against civil society using the COVID as a peer by the state, quite a number of issues coming out. The gender perspective as well has just been presented by ignorance. So still the question is then what are we saying? Recently we've been reading, stories around accusations of civil society planning around uprising against the state, which are lies, because we're in the civil society anyway, so we know the truth. Also accusations against Mr. Maria, making a base of criticism. What does it mean for civil society? Are these not attacks already started against us? And what are we going to do as we enter the designated period? That is the question. So my role here is probably to assist each other to maybe put up some recommendations, not only to use Zimbabwe, but to the broader civil society sector in view of the human rights situation. What should we do? How can we better prepare ourselves for the unseen, the unknown? Who wants to give it short? Yes, how can we prepare ourselves better? I'll start with you.
Thank you. I think I will just hammer in on what Reverend Masungu is saying on the need to strengthen local structures or your CPOs, since they are the ones that work on the ground. I think there's need to capacitate them, give them as much capacity as possible, so that we can prevent and mitigate conflicts in local communities. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. We need to strengthen CBOs. I think we've seen the rise of the CBOs, what I would call the rise of the CBOs in recent times, where they are actually taking charge in equal role societies and also setting their agenda. Quite important structures in civil society. So they need to be strengthened, and they need to be in a space or sphere where they are able to, protect human rights defenders, communities, as well as the people that work within these CBOs. Who else? I hope someone is taking note from using them.
Yeah, thanks, Frank. Yeah, I think I would want to take my recommendation from the presentation that Tamuka gave, about the need to understand the import of the reconfigured political economy. I think when he talked about the golden age of civil society, which lasted, I think, from the late 1990s to around 2012, there was a heightening then of civil and political rights, which unfortunately came at the expense of the realization of the importance of socio-economic rights. What we have seen, and I think also a response by ZANU-PF and them as government, has been that ability to put socio-economic rights at the center of their organizing, which I think as civil society we also need to gradually be alive to and also gradually be able to enter that particular space. Because like Tamuka was saying, the 1.8 million households that get the presidential input scheme, it speaks to the socio-economic rights. If you look at the 1.2 million artisanal miners, it speaks to the issue of socio-economic rights. So I think we need to be alive in our programming to not neglect that aspect of rights, concentrating, on elections and everything civil and political. I think we need to marry, our trust on civil and political rights together with socio-economic rights. So that would be my recommendation. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you so much, Terry. I happen to be working with artisanal miners, so I understand your point. They are more concerned about socio-economic rights. And if we leave that aspect, it's not become, we actually alienate, marginalize them, and they are not part of the agenda anymore. Thank you so much for raising that important point. We else? Okay, 2 points. I think if you can raise 5 points, we have done a very good work.
I just want to give an emphasis on what Tim said, the issue of research. But there is one problem that happens with researchers. Researchers often use the jargon, the deep language, and that language is not it's not usable when it comes to making sure that people get the information right. We're talking about CPOs. What happens is most of them, the organizations, so localized. If you produce a 250-page research report, going to decipher that report, it can be difficult. I work with young people. We share reports, we share researches, we follow researches a lot. And when you say to people, at the end, what do you understand from the research? You can pick two things. So I think more work needs to be done with academia as well as civil society so that we research with the intention of using the information, which means we research producing reports which are usable, which are utilized, targeting the issues, and also the language have to be understandable. It's just, and also translation of some researches can be easily translated so that they can reach a wider audiences. The academia often write for each other, and in the civil society, we often write for donors, for other partners. But let us write our reports, our researches for the people, not only for us. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. Research is important, but it needs to be packaged and disseminated in a user-friendly manner, isn't it?
Yes.
I know these days, most researchers will actually do research, then they actually break it down using infographics, animation, or even radio program, theater, and so forth. So there are so many ways in which we can disseminate information from research. But research is important. The way in which it's disseminated, probably packaged and disseminated, has to be probably reviewed so that it makes more sense to us and the audience. Two more people.
Thank you. I think going forward, we need to look into the rural areas. That's where most of the human rights violations are being done, and also that's where most of the perpetrators of these human rights are because of our culture and system. So there's need to look into the rural areas. And also on message packaging, I think it is also good that we now use the new technologies, the social medias and so forth, to package our human rights messages so that they blend into this generation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. We should not forget marginalized societies, isn't it? I think I tend to agree with you. So many issues come out after elections or after an event has happened. You say, well, this person was beaten up, was maimed, or so forth. So it's important for us to understand that there are marginalized communities that are part of the movement, but you should not leave them out. Somebody has to know that, somebody has to reach out to them. The last person, probably the last person. Fully present, unless there's one very good.
Thank you very much. I think my major point of contention or worry is, yes, we have done such a conference. Yes, we have agreed that there's a lot of human rights violations that are taking place in our country. Yes, there's or security services become compromised. My question would be at the end of it all, what are we going to do? Are we going to walk or get into 2023 and experience a peaceful election for starters? This nation is in a perennial election mode, and each time elections are spoken about, it's like it's a spike that has been added into people's voting. People tend to be violent. People think violent. The way we interact on social media is so alarming. The way people find it so easy to use certain words um, when someone crosses their path, or when they feel they've got a right or some sort, be it just a woman dressed the way she wants to be dressed, be it somebody expresses their opinion. The language of hate has become so ingrained in our society that I feel we need to do and take more practical actions on the ground, far away from conference rooms, and I don't know, even take it back to the home level. And how do they interact with neighbors on a daily basis? And for me, I think the confidence that I'll have to say I'm raising responsible children is their ability to even disagree with someone without being violent, disagree without using vulgar language, disagree without feeling the need to beat up somebody, but agreeing to disagree amicably. So I feel like at the end of the day, the responsibility lies with all of us to then say, what is my response when I go into my society? I have hard-headed individuals in it, but how do I interact with them in such a manner that they also will realize that Jambanja is done at the end of the day. So I think that will be my contribution to say International Human Rights 2021, let it not just pass without an individual making that pledge to say, what is my responsibility in the whole peace matrix? Thank you.
Okay, I think she's put the icing on the cake. Let's agree to disagree. I think this is one thing that is at the heart of youth development programming to say, how do we promote social cohesion, even in areas where there are differences? I think you actually put it right to say charity begins at home. Probably we might have to start teaching our kids to live in peace with others. Probably we might have to take it to the streets, let's educate our communities to live in peace and to, the desist from, attacking each other and doing each other as enemies all the time. I think you actually put it right, and I wanted to put this the last one, but I think there's one burning one. Then we can put it again.
So much. I just wanted to put in force as well to include the suggestion which has been coming from the group of people with disability. So to say, we have to be intentional. We speak of it specifically as a pillar or a principle and value in our way. But I also wish to see it being actualized and being carried over into the very foundation of the work effort that we're doing as upholders of human rights. And maybe just to cross over as well into the issues of economics. I feel peace and development are mutually reinforcing. So I feel again, apart from being the ones who define what's violence and what's peace without violence, elimination of conflict, is also try to find ways, scientific mechanisms that I suggested earlier on in the morning, being innovative about how we conceptualize the nexus between the two, and also finding ways of buying into the other sectors. You realize that some of these issues are divorced from the majority of citizens or that believe. Well, it seems like there's nothing for them. It's something that could be quite dangerous, important, say, or it's a ground which you really need to tread carefully. But if you also bridge it with the economic aspect as well, I strongly believe we can take more consensus and effectiveness and even wider active citizenship. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. I couldn't agree. I couldn't agree less. So leave no one behind. That is the message coming from brother over there. Leave no one behind. It's important for us to include anyone in the human rights matrix. Yes, we had a presentation about about gender condition. What about people with disabilities? Where are they within this matrix? Probably all the marginalized people that we have in our society, the children, women, disabled people, and so forth. Where are they within the human rights matrix? So I think with these, thank you so much for these submissions. I'm sure you Zimbabwe and all the people that are here taking note of this and will be able to practice this within our institutions. Thank you so much for this going through this session, which is quite important. I will end this day to you Zimbabwe. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Frank. Colleagues, I don't want to keep you here for long, but just to say thank you so much for taking time off your busy schedules to come and be part of these conversations. Thank you so much. I don't know, I think issues of housekeeping have been dealt with. I understand that. Okay, and I'm just being notified that if there is any who hasn't signed the register, please kindly do so before you leave. With these few words, let me take this opportunity to say thank you once again. If you guys did not come, it wouldn't be a success. But thank you so much for coming. Thank you.
Yeah. Musangano wa mpira.